All right, I'm going to close them down. Well, thanks everyone for coming. This is our first in a series on our Dreamweaver series. Alejandro Gutierrez is going to be your host today. Give me just a second here, Alejandro. Next time I'll put these all in layout so it'll be faster. All right, there you go. Alejandro, I'll let you take it away. And folks, just a reminder too, we have a pretty active chat pod going here this morning. If you have questions for the speaker, post those in the Q&A below and we'll keep chat open for just our conversation on this side.
Yeah, we'll get into some Q&A at the end. So I'll just be kind of going through the various areas to cover, and then we'll take some of that question and answer afterward. So this is just a little about me. I do have a portfolio site, but it's I mean barely done. I wouldn't even say it's done. So I have a note here like please only on Chrome with 1,000 pixel or greater display. I just think it's hilarious that I'm working on the very tool that I used for so long to design, and then I just ran out of time to design for myself. But I'm sure some of you can relate to that. Please follow me on Twitter. There's my handle up at the very top right. Okay, cool. So Dreamweaver, I am looking forward to sharing with you guys a bunch of new stuff in Dreamweaver. But just before I get into that, I did want to say a couple of things about it. Our goal here is to keep Dreamweaver, actually bring Dreamweaver up to date, make Dreamweaver much more useful for folks in the web design business. We are very focused on modernizing Dreamweaver right now, streamlining the UI, deprecating a lot of the features that are there, well actually removing features that align with deprecated technologies and tech stacks, and focusing on web and web forward tech stack rather than Adobe tech stack. So for example, we'll get more into this later, but one of the things that we have removed is Spry functionality, and we're working on replacing that with jQuery, because jQuery is an open source framework based on JavaScript. It's got a ton of potential and a ton of usage, so we feel that that's a better type of workflow to offer, but we'll get more into that later. In going for that goal of modernization, we have removed a number of items. So in the past, Dreamweaver was a very had a lot of steps. It had a lot of steps to do any given task, and so we've taken out a number of things. 10 of the panels that appear in the middle of a workflow are now gone. 14 pop-up dialog boxes, so trying to combine and concatenate components of a workflow to make things more straightforward. And then whopping 64 menu items. So we're really, and this is just the beginning, we're really focused on streamlining, we're really focused on cleaning up the overall user experience and the UI as well. So we've also addressed, specifically with regard to some of those menu items and dialog boxes, typography is something that we feel is very important for the web, obviously, and we have repaired, I would say, a workflow with font usage. So previously you had a dialog box on top of a dialog box on top of a dialog box just to manage a font, just to choose a font. So whereas in the past, if you really wanted to get into proper web typography, you would use Flash. Then we got into some JavaScript solutions with Kufon and other libraries. Then CSS kind of opened up to web typography with font face declarations. And we've tried to embrace that. Also the fact that Adobe has acquired Typekit, we're we're leveraging that and putting that into the product. Part of this is our commitment to regular updates. So you're actually going to see me showcasing Dreamweaver CS6 against Dreamweaver CC, which will launch on the 17th of June. But the CS6 that you're going to see is not the one that launched last May. It's actually the most recent CS6 that was updated as recently as February. So the funny thing there is it's all tied to it's all connected to the Creative Cloud. So as a Creative Cloud member, you get these constant updates. Part of our approach to Dreamweaver is constantly putting out. It's not just about new features, but when we put out a new feature, following up on that very shortly after that release to address the bugs that you guys have found, address the usability issues that have come up, and really improve and optimize those features as time goes by. So that's our commitment. Now, I did want to get a little bit into some of the modernization stuff just because that's going to have a big impact on a lot of workflows. So looking at Dreamweaver CS6, let's start by talking about the document toolbar. You can see here I'm just in design view, and I've got a number of items and icons here that are probably very familiar to most of you. They stay present, as you can see, in live view. What we've done here is we've removed a lot of these. So a lot of these are, say, one-time items. For example, W3C validation. I mean, you're not going to be doing that every time you type a line of code or every time you insert a new element. So you might do that a couple of times. Visual aids. A lot of these are really references to deprecated styles. Multi-screen preview is kind of a bit of a clunky approach as well. So what we've done is we've removed many of those items and tried to keep the shortcuts that seem the most relevant. So we keep the get input in place. Previewing in a browser is pretty important, and we've surfaced the fluid grid shortcut, as you can see, and taken that out of the visual aids. Now, looking at the bottom of the document toolbar, we have some more removals. And you can see here we've got this download size, download time. We've got zooming controls and a document form factor, so to speak, that quite frankly I think you would establish at the beginning of your workflow, and you wouldn't necessarily keep working on that. So in Dreamweaver CC, we've taken all that out. We've just got little previews, as you can see, and we've kept some of the responsive design components, but other than that, you've just got your tag selector. So this leaves plenty of room for you to get into the architecture, the content structure. Okay. Additionally, we have made some changes to the insert panel, and you can see this very clearly here. So SPRY, in context, as well as data. All three of these components are now gone from the insert panel. And the reason we've done that is in many cases because they are deprecated technologies that either we are looking to replace or we already have replaced. And mainly because we needed to make room for more web-forward technology stacks. So for example, HTML5 forms now appears in Dreamweaver. jQuery UI and widgets and that sort of thing. So, and we're going to continue building that out, and we are very focused on replacing the deprecated styles with what we feel are more web forward. All right. Let's also take a look at typography very briefly. Many of you have already seen this, but even in the most recent update of Dreamweaver CS6, we addressed this, but prior to that you wouldn't have seen the new workflow for fonts. So if I want to edit a font, it's quite straightforward for me to do that now. So rather than having dialogue upon dialogue, I literally just have one manage fonts dialogue, and this allows me to get into my Edge web fonts workflows, which are also new as of last February. I can still go and download a little font kit from Font Scroll or any of the many foundries out there. And I can use my web-safe font stacks here, as you can see. So we've tried to keep that very straightforward. Our goal is to continue investing in intuitive visual layout and design controls, which are focused on HTML and CSS, as well as continuing to evolve our support for relevant front-end web technologies such as jQuery. Maybe we have more work to do with Bootstrap and that kind of thing. A great example here would be, yes, we've taken away Spry, and maybe you're concerned about maybe you used to use the Spry menu system. Well, we've actually, I guess, unofficially partnered with an extension developer named DMX Zone. These guys are actually going to be releasing an extension on June 17th for free, which is a Bootstrap menu system. So you can build a menu with Bootstrap. It's very much CSS3. It's very much not Spry, right? And Spry, being a deprecated proprietary Adobe technology, we don't wish to continue going down that path. We want to support something that's more web forward, as I've said. Okay, so in addition to that, we're looking to pursue deeper integration with Creative Cloud itself, as well as many of you saw during Max, there were some pretty interesting demos with what you can do with Photoshop. So creating connections there, and then as we move forward with our modernization effort, we recognize that a lot of folks also use a lot of dynamic site development and a lot of responsive design and that sort of thing. So those are all areas of focus for us moving forward. Okay, so let's get into some specifics now that we've kind of talked a little bit high level. You can see here, I'm going to collapse my insert panel. You can see here our CSS styles panel. We have completely rethought this and taken a whole new approach to CSS and editing CSS in Dreamweaver. So I would like to introduce to you the CSS Designer. All right, now let's have a look at the CSS Designer. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open this guy out just a little bit so we can take a look at what's going on. We have 4 main areas in the CSS Designer. And let me see something here. I keep getting these little chat notifications. But you know what, guys? Let's just power through. Okay, so sources is fairly straightforward. You can see here a number of CSS files. This is all of the locations, all of the files that inform the CSS. So you can see I've got a number of files here. You may have a project with no files. You may be defining strictly inline CSS, but we've made this very straightforward. I can create a new CSS file. I can attach something from another project, let's say, or I can define directly in the page, and all of that will appear here. Okay, below that we have media queries. Now, media queries, most of you are familiar with the basics of responsive design, but even if you're not, you can kind of get a sense of what this is. This is defining different screen widths, and what this will do is this will allow me to define rules within selectors that are contained within those media queries. Okay, below that we have selectors, and this kind of works as a filter. So one great workflow to get into is, as I'm building out a new page, I can choose a source, I can choose a media query to work within, and you can see that these selectors below are filtered based on the media queries that I've chosen. Additionally, the screen size will adapt to the media queries that I choose. But once I then choose a selector, you can see the list of properties being shown on the right-hand side. Something important to note is that I have 2 modes of viewing the properties. One is to view the full list of properties, and as I change the selectors, different properties become bold. And I think it's fairly straightforward. You'll see bold properties as the ones that have been edited or changed, and non-bold properties are not set. Okay, but I can also do something here up in the right-hand corner of the Properties panel. I can click Show Set, and this shows me a consolidated view of all the properties that are set for any given selector. Okay, it's great to go back and forth between the two. It's very good to get used to that workflow. Now, the last thing I'll say about this panel, before getting into actually using it, is that we've made the panel itself responsive. So as I increase the size of my design surface, eventually I hit a point where the panel drops down into a single column rather than a double column. And on top of that, because your main workflow is going to be between selectors and properties, we've tried to make these things as intuitive and easy and fun to use as possible. So a single click collapses each of the panels. Okay, you can kind of see that here. There we go. Okay, so let's see what we can do with this. Now, some of you guys might be familiar from CS6 with the way that this works, but I can define a viewport within this menu right here for viewing the different sizes, or I can just set it to full size, which will respond to the actual design surface that I define. Okay, so now let's have a look at this. The best thing you can do for working with the CSS designer is go ahead and pop in a live view. Being very transparent here, the build that you're looking at, this is the Dreamweaver CC build that we locked out in early May. This is going to be available June 17th. We are using something called, we're using an Adobe WebKit. It's our own fork of WebKit, but it's not 100% one-to-one with the WebKit that you would encounter in Safari or what you would have encountered in Chrome as of a few weeks ago. What we are doing is for the next release, which is coming up very, very quickly after we launch June 17th, we'll have another follow-up release very shortly after that, which will have a Chromium embedded framework, that's CEF3, which is very closely aligned with Blink and WebKit, okay? And our plan is to stay very close to those frameworks as we go forward. So this is all part of the modernization. This is all part of the web forward approach that we're taking with Dreamweaver. The WebKit rendering it is quite close now, will be much closer going forward. Okay, so now that I've had a little bit to chat about that, I'd like to get into a little bit of working with the CSS designer before we go into other components of what's new here. So you can see that I've just gone into inspect. That hasn't changed. We still have the same kind of inspect mode, okay? And I can click once to lock something in place. Now here I have a logo text that I'd like to make a little bit more interesting, okay? So what I can do, now that I've clicked that, I have a computed list of properties showing in my properties panel. This is all the properties that are affecting this element. Additionally, I have selectors listed that affect the element as well. Okay, now you can see a couple of logo bottom selectors that intuitively you might know are what you would use to edit this, okay? But we've gone a step further there. Now, font size, 25 pixels. I know I want to change the font size of this thing, but before I do, I'm actually just going to click on font size itself, and what this does is this shows me context. All right, now we're working to make this even easier, but right now what you can do is you can look up into the selectors and you can see in bold the selector that this property is coming from, and it's logo bottom, defined under @media, and min width 481 pixels. Now if I hover over the other one, you can see the other one is defined under global. Now I want to make this font nice and big no matter what viewport or handset or device I'm looking at, okay? So I'm actually going to choose the one that's global. I'm going to go to font size, and I'm going to set it to 50 pixels. All right, now you notice that doesn't change. Why is that? Because the min width 481 pixels is actually still engaged. So what I'm going to do is go back there, and you can see that just when I hover a property, I've got a disable, okay, which I can click and get my nice big font, and I've got a delete. So I'm just going to delete that because I don't need it. All right, now let's get into some other stuff here, and on the topic of typography, okay, let's inspect down to this other font area, this other text area, and you can see I've got this gear up phrase. Well, I decided I want to make a change here and get a more interesting font going there. So let's go into our Manage Fonts dialog and take a look at our list of fonts here. Now I have a favorite font here called Babus New, and I'm going to go ahead and click that once, and then as a backup, maybe I'll grab a couple other fonts, okay? Now what that does, that doesn't actually choose the font, it just adds them to my list of fonts. So I can choose Babus, and let's see what that looks like. So it's refreshing, because what it's actually doing is it's writing a little bit of code to the just a little bit of code to the head of your HTML document, which is some JavaScript code that's pulling down the font from our servers. So we're working with Typekit servers here, so these are very stable, and as you might imagine, it's a very reliable way to serve up a web font. Okay. Okay. I'm sort of forgetting why I can't increase the font size here. Okay. So let's go forward now and see what else we can do with the CSS designer. So down here I have some elements that I don't find particularly interesting visually. Okay. These are links to different categories of products. And what I would like to do is make these a little bit prettier. So what I've done is I've inspected once again to highlight one of these things, and I'm going to scroll down and see what kind of properties I have set. And without even going any further, I already know off the bat I'd like to change the border radius of this guy. So let's do that. Let's grab this tool, this border radius tool, and let's do a couple things here so that we can get a little more context. I'm going to click on border radius and see which selector this is coming from. Now I'm looking at categories nav link icon min width 1000 pixels. Okay, so if I make a change here, this is only going to affect that element for a screen size greater than 1000 pixels. I'm okay with that. And looking up, I can see I've got a width of 70 pixels. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in 70 pixels to get my classic rounded corners appearance, okay? And in case you missed it, I clicked this button in the middle to link everything together, all right? But looking up here, you can see I've also got a min width 769 pixels. So what we've done is actually we've gone in, and when we developed this, I'm going to go ahead and select this, we made these a little smaller for that screen size. So with that selected, you can see the width of these elements is actually 60 pixels at the 769 pixel mark. So I'm going to go ahead and you can see that these were already set, but let's drop these down to 0 and then back up to 60. You can see that updating in real time. So that's what's so great about working with the CSS designer. You've got your live view turned on, you're looking at a WebKit rendering, you're making changes in the properties panel, and it's updating in real time. Okay. The last thing I'll do for a little bit of interesting visual effect is, actually let me set this back to 60, and I'm going to unlink these, and I'm going to take one of these corners and drive it down to 0, okay, and this kind of creates a little droplet effect, which for me works because it kind of goes with this theme of the waterfall that you see in the background, all right, and I'm going to do the same thing here with the higher screen size. All right. So I just want to demo one more thing, and then we'll have a quick glance at a few more new elements. But let's take a look at some other tools as well. So I'm going to inspect now to another element in the same area, which is the wetsuits. And looking over here at the selectors, you can see that I actually have some selectors with the word wetsuits in them. So you know there's going to be some specificity here. But let's take a good look, because all of these items have different background colors, okay? So let's take a look at the background color. And by clicking on background color, you can see the categories nav wetsuits. One of these selectors becomes highlighted, okay? And it's the one that's at the min width 769 pixels. When we developed this, we actually hide these icons below 760, below 769 pixels. So, or I should say below 770 pixels. So we don't need to affect them below that screen size, okay? Now here's what's happening. I've chosen that selector, and you see that the only property set for it is the background color. But what I can do is I can unclick Show Set, and I can start to make changes here, all right? Now, I think what I want to do to get a good sense of what this is looking like, I'm actually going to turn off my fluid grid layouts, okay? And I'm going to come up to this element, and let's just click outside of it real quick, and you can see that these are basically just, when I hover them, they're just turning a slightly darker color, but maybe I want to change that up and do something a little more interesting. So with the same selector we were working with in mind, you can see I have a background color hover property. And let's go ahead and click on that one, and you can see which selector is being highlighted there, okay? Now, I can again click Show Set to see what we're working with, or I can use my shortcut icons in the Properties panel. Layout, text, border, background, and others, okay? Let's click on background, and lo and behold, we have a gradient control. So let's add that, okay? I'm going to keep this fairly simple, but as you can see, we have a color selector, we've got the hue, the level of depth, and then an alpha control, all right? And I've also got different formats. Of course, as you probably know, when I'm in hex mode, this does not allow for alpha control, but in RGBA, obviously it does. So let's go and choose kind of a nice blue color for this one. Now this is the middle color stop. Let's change the bottom color stop as well to maybe a darker blue, and then we'll leave the top one white. And what I'm going to do for all of these is I'm going to lower the opacity just about half, okay? And that's going to make a little bit more of a subtle effect, all right? Click Enter once. Now you can see when I hover that, I've got a nice gradient effect. So that's how easy it is to create gradients and rounded corners and all that stuff with the CSS Designer. Okay, now I do want to get into a couple new areas, and I'm not going to rush too fast, but let's talk a little bit about content management systems and dynamic site development. Okay, now because of time constraints, I've had to go and set a few of these things up ahead of time. Okay, but what I've done, I'm running MAMP. Okay, MAMP is an application for running an Apache server with some PHP and MySQL support. Word to the wise, we may or may not be looking at automating that type of thing, but you didn't hear that from me, except that you did. Okay, so here we are with a blog project, and let's take a quick look at the file structure here. Oh boy, I sure hope I set this up ahead of time. Okay, so this is just a WordPress site. It's very straightforward. You know, you've got your content, your themes, your index.php. Okay, so what we're looking at is index.php. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this into live view, okay, and go into, so you can see that this is just literally the dynamic code component, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to log in just as if I were in the browser. This is what's so fun about Dreamweaver. I actually already logged in before this demonstration, so let's just pretend that, you know, actually I'll go ahead and show you guys this. You know, it's just as if you were in the browser, but what's great about this is you can log in and manage everything directly from within Dreamweaver. You can actually preview all the content and everything else. Now, what I had to do that I don't have time to demo is I had to set up some themes. I had to take a 2012 theme, okay? I had to make a child of that theme, save it locally, okay? So what you get is I've got my own theme, and I've got my own some CSS styling and things like that, but I've got it saved locally. So I've got my style.css, and this is all running on a local server, again, which is why I'm using MAMP, okay? So I'm not even deploying this to the web yet. This is all local, but we're running the PHP and the MySQL behind it, okay? So let's go look at where we're at with our blog design. And you can see a couple of things here. It's a little wonky. I've got this navigation's a little funny, and this search component's a little weird as well, okay? So first thing I want to do is I want to put these nav elements next to one another, and I'm going to use the CSS designer to do that. So I can inspect, I can go to this guy, and excuse me, you can see here I've got a block level display. Now that might be good for certain screen sizes, but I would say generally speaking, I want to have this set to a little bit higher. So let's take a look at these. I've just clicked on that selector, and I've got this element coming from min width 600 pixels, and this one which is set globally. So I think for my global one, I'd like to go ahead and set this to display block, because what this is going to allow me to do is when I go into 600 pixels, I can set this to inline or inline block, and now they're right next to each other, and this is a little bit more of a normal navigation experience. But if I go ahead and pop down to something below 600 pixels, you can see that they're stacked. And actually, I was experimenting with some jQuery stuff here, so you don't actually get to see that right now. So ha ha ha. That's for me to see and for you guys to have fun with later. Okay, so let's have a look here. We've kind of got a little bit of a boring search bar, and the world loves rounded corners thanks to Apple. So let's have a look at some of these elements, okay? I've got some padding controls here, I've got some margin. Let's take a look at the search form S, okay? Now I'm using the shortcut to get to the borders, and let's do a little experiment here and try to drag these up to 30 pixels. Nope, you can see that this isn't working. So what this tells me is that I may be too specific, okay? So let's take a look. Nav group search form, and then I'm working on another ID here, but if I scroll down, I can see I've got a nav group search form selector as well. So let's try and set the border radius on that. Okay, now you see that that's working. So I guess what I'm trying to showcase there is we're really focused on making the inspect and preview workflow more straightforward, and we feel that by showing the cascading style, you can really get into a lot of this, a lot of the structure and a lot of the layout and styling. And even if there's a little bit of experimentation that has to happen, you can get to where you got to go. Now, going another step forward, you can see we kind of have a square peg round hole action here. So let's take a look at a couple of these. I'm actually going to click the show set option and see what's working for this. And for the input, I've got a search form input, but then I've also got a search submit, which is giving me the background color. So aha, right? That's your aha moment. If I click out of there, you can see the background color is matching the color that I discovered on that selector. So again, I look at input, I don't necessarily see anything that's jumping out at me. I look at search submit, and I see a background color that matches. So this tells me that this is a good place for me to go, unclick show set so I get the full list of properties, click on the border shortcut, scroll down to the border radius, click this guy in place, and maybe do a matching border radius for that element. And sure enough, round peg, round hole, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about, so we've talked about dynamic site development, we've talked about CSS editing, preview and inspect. Let's talk a little bit about some HTML5 and evolution of web kind of stuff. So something we've added in Dreamweaver CC, and actually that we've been adding as we go, is support for more HTML5 elements. One of those is a form element. So what I can do here, I'm actually going to turn off my fluid grid layout so this is a little easier. And I'm in design view, I don't have live view turned on. I'm going to open up my properties panel, okay? Now this workflow should be familiar to some of you. Let's go to the insert panel, and I've already got form selected, so let's add a couple of components here. I'm going to add email, and you can see that it just pops it right below. Let's take a quick look at the code, because I think it's important to know what's happening. Okay, this is very web standard, clean code that we are adding here. So I've just added an element there. Now I'm clicking again on the email element, which I've just added, and I'm going to add something yet again below that. Okay, and you can see it's adding a label, it's adding the form element, and I just saw a note that you can't read the yellow elements of the code. Well, okay, so this is actually much clearer if you're if you're in the session yourself. I'm sorry that you're not able to see, but you can see in the properties panel, I've got all the HTML5 components that are available to me. So I can click required, I can click autocomplete, I can choose a pattern for my telephone. So boom, there you go. So I can put a title for this, or even a placeholder. Okay, and then when I render this in live view, you can see all these elements taking place. Okay, and anything that I click required, that automatically invokes a little bit of JavaScript code. Okay, so that is HTML5 forms. We have filled out this this insert panel with everything that's available. We're very committed to, in an ongoing, iterative way, staying up to date with the specification. So as you saw with CSS, we're very focused on CSS3 behaviors. Similarly with HTML5, we're very focused on a lot of the HTML5 components. The last of which, I'll just show you guys real quickly here. You can see here, I've got a call to action to download an application. But let's say I want to add a little bit more oomph to that. So what I can do is I can actually insert edge animate compositions. Now, why does that matter to me? Well, edge animate is an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript rendering tool that allows you to design compositions and animations that are very web friendly. And what's cool about that is that they render on any device. So I no longer have to worry about having Flash animations not render. So that's probably no surprise to a lot of you, but you can see in my insert panel I've got a media section, and in media I've got my HTML5 video, I've still got support for Flash, but I also have Edge Animate. Okay, so let's take a look at what that looks like. All right, and of course I already know where I've saved this, but if you're in Edge Animate, what you can do is you can save a number of different formats, but you have a publish option, and the publish option lets you save a sort of web package, which is a JSONified package of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right, so let's pop that in there, and you can see it's added my composition. So let's see what happens when I render this in live view. Okay, you can see that animating a little bit. Okay, there you go. Now you can really see that happening. Hopefully that's rendering across Adobe Connect, but the handset bounced down, this little item kind of slides in. So you can see just within Dreamweaver, you can add and preview your Edge Animate content. Okay? So that is very much in a nutshell a lot of what's new in Dreamweaver. A few things we didn't cover would be jQuery mobile. We didn't cover PhoneGap build. We've optimized the PhoneGap build experience, but I tried to cover as much as possible while still leaving time for you guys to have some questions. So let's turn it over to all of you, and get some of these questions answered. All right. There we go. Okay, so chat history has been cleared. Uh-oh. Did we clear?
Nope. Do you see the big Q&A?
big Q&A. Yeah, but at the top it says chat history has been cleared. Did we lose some of the chat from before?
Oh, very, very early on. It's not.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's hope so. I saw somebody had, are you sure? Because I saw a comment that was like kind of a funny one. Somebody was kind of bored, I think, and so they typed Z, 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 but I don't see that here.
Yeah, it's okay, Alejandro. I cleared out some of the chatter.
Okay. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start at the top here, and then if there's more chat, it looks like there's another chat module that we can take a look at. Will the new version have better features for doing responsive websites? Prayer-on answered that. Oh, wait. Yeah, many improvements to the fluid grid layout, so yes, creating responsive websites is much easier. But I actually want to answer that a little bit better. So with regard to responsive websites, to designing responsive content, something that's very important to acknowledge here, we have our own framework for doing this. That's the Fluid Grid Layout Framework. But the CSS, I don't want to call it specification because CSS is not a specification, but the CSS body of behaviors is right now bringing something called Flexbox, sort of bringing it back or updating it. There was an old version of Flexbox. There's a new version of Flexbox, which is very powerful. And it's very powerful when used in conjunction with other frameworks. So even though the Dreamweaver CC build that you see today doesn't have support for Flexbox, at least for the new Flexbox, that is something that we're taking very seriously, and we will be integrating that going forward. So, and similarly, there's CSS grids as well, which is very primitive right now, but will continue to evolve. So we're going to have support for those other frameworks as well. We're going to continue to work on our fluid grid layout framework so that it's just easier and easier to use. I mean, it has limitations right now. Working across multiple sites, it's very difficult to set up, to basically work on a page that would iterate across multiple sites. We have a solution for that. It hasn't launched yet, but that's something that we're looking at launching as soon as humanly possible, maybe even the very next update. Also, if you make a change to the fluid grid layout and then you click undo, there's a bug there. So some of these bugs and usability issues, we're very aware of them. We're working with users all the time to figure them out. So as much as we've improved our fluid grid layouts, we know we can do even more. So that's, I think, the best answer I can give to that question. So would you have to connect it to the internet after you download it? Antoine is asking about connection to the internet. And no, you don't need to connect to the internet. You do need to have an internet connection every 99 days or something like that, just so that the Creative Cloud can ping, or the software can ping the Creative Cloud to make sure that it's not, it's not bunk. But you would need a Creative Cloud or an internet connection to use Edge web fonts, for example, because those are served by the Typekit servers. So that is important to note. Okay. Someone's asking about Cold Fusion. Cold Fusion is a tricky one. Our previous integration wasn't really doing a whole lot of good there necessarily. I mean, I think that there were some workflows that were fairly clunky. Cold Fusion is kind of a moving target right now. So John Barrett, I can't answer you definitively at this time. I mean, we don't have any immediate plans to bring it back though. So we're looking at the viability of working that back in. Let's see. Daniel Kramer is asking about the drop-down nav menus in Muse. So that's a great question, because that's something that we used to offer with Spry that we've sort of taken away. Now, we're very committed to the jQuery framework, And jQuery is actually working on a jQuery menu framework. But in the meantime, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, DMX Zone is an extension developer that we have worked with a bunch. They've got a ton of great extensions out there. They actually have a free Bootstrap menu extension, which, as many of you know, Bootstrap is a very lightweight, very web-forward framework that is easy and fun to use. So you can literally download the DMX Zone Bootstrap menu extension for free starting on June 17th, and that's going to let you build those drop-down nav menus, okay? Camilo is asking about Typekit and Edge Web Fonts. You saw the Edge Web Fonts integration. We don't have Typekit integration yet, but that's something we're working toward. Now, Don Nelson is asking about Sass and Less compiler. We do not have a compiler for Sass and Less in Dreamweaver, and we're not certain that we're going to be including pre-compilers. However, again, the same extension developer that I mentioned, DMX Zone, they have, I believe it's a Less compiler extension, and it's either very cheap or it's free. I don't remember which, but it's out there already, and it's a great tool. Integrates very well with Dreamweaver, and we've had a lot of success with that. Okay. Round trip with AI files like as PSD files. Marlon is asking about round tripping with Illustrator files and also with Photoshop. We are absolutely looking at integration with some of these products. We're absolutely looking at what a meaningful workflow would be between the two. We already have CSS extraction happening in Photoshop, as many of you saw during Max. So we will be working with those guys to bring you some of those features. Jeannie Hill is asking, is CSS Designer available today in the cloud subscription? It's not. It's launching on June 17th, as Praron answered you. But if anyone wants to join the pre-release community, and if you guys help us with some testing and some feature validation and that sort of thing, then you can have access to all the latest builds. It's quite cool. Just shoot me a note on Twitter, and I'll type my handle again. Shoot me a note on Twitter, and we'll get you guys going with the latest builds. And those, of course, do have the CSS Designer. Now, a Typekit panel, Bob Levine is asking. We're always open to suggestion on the best way to manage typography. We do have that Edge Web Fonts dialogue. So, but any way we can improve that, we're open to that as well. Now, Brian is asking about injecting tables into fluid grids. I've never tried it. I have never tried it. So I don't think that is a possibility, but rather than using tables, you might want to consider using Flexbox or yeah, you might want to look at Flexbox, because Flexbox actually offers some similar functionality there. But if you're using tables for HTML emails, then that's something completely different, obviously. Okay, so Bob Levine is asking, is Dreamweaver still 32-bit only? Yes, right now Dreamweaver is 32-bit. We recognize that 64-bit is important, and that is not lost on us. So I won't give an immediate time frame for that, but it is part of our focus. Bob Levine also asks about Dark UI. As you saw at the very beginning of the session, there's a lot of duplicated content and a lot of problems with the UI right now, with icons being different sizes and all these kind of weird workflows. Our focus right now is on streamlining and optimizing the UI. I think later we can talk about like a dark UI kind of approach or something, but actually more important than that to me would be establishing the right the right design for the UI overall, rather than just creating a dark UI. I don't think that goes far enough. So, you know, yes to 32. Yes, we are working on 64-bit. I think that we have bigger fish to fry with the UI. It's very clunky right now, so we want to fix it. Something new about Grim. That's funny. No, yeah, I think that it's not entirely accurate to say no new UI. I mean, we're incorporating more and more features, as you saw with the Edge web fonts and the gradient picker. There are a lot of other features as well that are coming from the Edge tools and services. So we're actually aligning with them on a lot of things. So rather than go and align with Photoshop and InDesign on a UI, I actually think that it's maybe in some ways better to try and align with other web tools. So, you know, because we're a web tool more than a static design tool. Okay, can we get the source HTML, CSS image files for us to inspect? Yeah, actually, we can definitely provide that demo that you saw. I'm happy to share that. So let me just make sure that I can do that from a legal perspective. But Hyun, Hyun, if you want to ping me on Twitter, that's great. Let's see. A lot of plugin for dark UI and 64-bit. Yeah. So here's the question: Will June Dreamweaver CC automatically work inside Business Catalyst? So Business Catalyst and Dreamweaver still have the integration that they had before, but we're working with them. We're talking with them. So as they evolve their service, we plan to continue to provide that workflow and optimize it. So MAMP install. Okay, so Tony Pro, I definitely said that we want to take on that type of workflow. I'm not saying that we're going to install MAMP in Dreamweaver. MAMP is not an Adobe product, but what MAMP does is it lets you run a PHP server locally, and that's something that we think you shouldn't have to go and use another application for. I think it would help a lot with the local testing workflow. Oh, Dan wants to see the code that Dreamweaver is generating for gradients and rounded corners. I don't see why not. Let me see here. So why don't I share my screen again real quick? Megan, can you help me with that?
There you go. Ah. You have it, Alejandro. There you go.
Alrighty. Let's go to my CSS file here. Categories nav link icon. All right. Here we have some border radius code. It was generated by the CSS designer. And let's find some, I think it was wetsuit. Here we go. There you go. There's your gradient. I actually think this is changing again. So what we do with this is we speak with our, we have some folks internally that sit on the web platform team. Now the web platform team works with Mozilla, they work with Google, they work with Apple, and those are the folks really defining the best practices. So in addition to our own internal subject matter experts, we work with our web platform folks, and then we have a number of folks on the pre-release group who also keep us honest. So really what you see is an amalgamation of those folks' suggestions. So those folks' suggestions. So with regard to vendor prefixing, for example, that's always been a bit of a moving target, but because we're updating every few months, we are constantly iterating our approach to vendor prefixing and syntax. So what you see is updated, I mean, at the most 3 or 4 months, will go by, and we're very committed to providing the best practice code. Our value proposition is visual tooling that outputs best practice web standard code, free of code bloat. If we're not doing that, keep us honest. Send us notes, send us examples of how we're doing it wrong, and we will fix it. And if you're in San Francisco, come do it in person and we'll buy you lunch, okay? Because we're dead set on that. So hopefully that gives you guys an idea of what we're working with. So let's get back to chat window. Okay. Code benefit. Okay. Is there a benefit in running new Dreamweaver in Mac OS X versus Windows? Ruby, that's going to depend on whether you like Windows or Mac better. Now, what does the refresh update cycle look like for Creative Cloud? I'm not sure what you're asking there, Travis. If you're asking about product updates, that's going to be anywhere from 2 to 5 months, probably 2 at the absolute minimum. As you'll see with the Dreamweaver CC launching on June 17th, that build was actually closed, locked and loaded in early May. So we've been working on the update for that already for like a month. And, you're going to see that update come out real quick. And that's going to fix a lot of the bugs and a lot of the usability issues that we're already seeing from our pre-release on the Creative Cloud build. Publishing something to the App Store can be done from Windows 2 through PhoneGap. Publishing something to the App Store. Oh, that's prayer on. Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about iOS, iTunes Connect, you can access iTunes Connect from a PC or a Mac. But publishing through PhoneGap, you do have to go through iTunes Connect for iOS. Brandy, I noticed the database panel is one that was removed. Does that mean no more MySQL classes for PHP? We're very committed to PHP support. MySQL is you might want to look online about MySQL, because it doesn't seem like PHP is going to be supporting MySQL in the future. So, we got to stay current there. But we are very committed to PHP support, 100%. Adobe, the standard toolbar in CS6 for map cannot be moved. Standard toolbar. Oh, you mean the right. So standard toolbar is open, browse and bridge, save, cut, copy, paste. We haven't done much with that, actually. I don't know that we'll be doing much with the standard toolbar. The document toolbar is what we feel is the biggest benefit. So what is new that supports SEO in HTML5? Jeannie, that's a tricky question. SEO these days is less about metadata and more about context. It's more about, publishing content regularly, on a regular basis. It's more about publishing content that's contextual, providing content from other sources. I mean, SEO is kind of tough. We haven't really looked at SEO as a major area for Dreamweaver. Any improvements in the code view? So Dan is asking about improvements in the code view, and he's asking about Emmet. So we have a whole laundry list of stuff that came from our pre-release group about code view, and as much as we are definitely into the visual tools aspect, we recognize that many people out there, myself included, I mean, I used Dreamweaver for years and years and never got outside of the code view. I was always in the code view. So that's definitely something that we're committed to as well. We'll continue to update code view. We're never going to try and shoot for a brackets-like experience because we think, brackets and edge code are kind of like the ultimate code editors. They're very powerful in what they can do. But we will continue to iterate. We also are talking about Emmet. We love Emmet, and it's on our horizon for sure. Justin is asking about less or SAS integration. What we have today, launching in Dreamweaver CC, is code hinting for SAS and less. So you can open up a SAS or less project, and you can do, you can start writing code, and we provide code hinting. So we have a code level support for SAS and less, but that's a partial integration because, as I said, we're not really looking at integrating a pre-compiler at this time. Now, Sully is asking about MySQL, a light MySQL for database connects. I don't want to answer that directly. I just want to say we want to nail the front end stuff first. Okay, guys? There are so many problems with workflows in Dreamweaver, with front end workflows, that we really got to nail down, and that's really our focus. Streamlining and modernizing the UI, simplifying the user experience, providing the true, front-end experience so that we can kind of be that, provide the visual tooling, provide good, solid web standards code for all these things, and then we can look at adding in some more web-forward middle layer and back-end stuff, okay? So, but, there are actually some amazing plugins. Another amazing plugin, and I'm sorry to keep referencing DMX Zone. I love those guys; they're doing great work. But that's not to the exclusion of other tools. This is it's just a reflection of how far we've gotten in exploring the partnerships or the sort of unofficial partnerships with some of these extension developers. Another great developer that would be this guy, Al Sparber. There's so there's a lot of ones. So I don't mean to keep referencing DMX Zone, but DMX Zone has an amazing datasets plugin. So they have a jQuery datasets plugin which allows you to pull data feeds in a dynamic way. Okay, and it's just called jQuery datasets, launching on June 17th for free, just like their Bootstrap menu plugin, okay? That kind of thing we're looking to offer Dreamweaver users to the greatest extent possible while we nail down the front end stuff. Then later we can work on some back end stuff. Zemo is asking, will there be an easier way to add slideshows? So again, I would refer to some extensions for that. There's some really great slideshow extensions. Adding a slideshow is pretty cool. I don't know that it's core to what we're trying to do with Dreamweaver, so at this current time we're not looking at that, but definitely maybe in the future. Definitely maybe. That's awesome. How simple is it to do responsive with the Dreamweaver boilerplate? So Evolucion is asking about using responsive design with Dreamweaver. Our Fluid Grid layout framework incorporates the boilerplate .css and has some fallback, some JavaScript fallback for older browsers. How simple is it to use the Fluid Grid layouts? Well, it's getting simpler all the time. CS 5.5, maybe they were pretty limited in what you could do. CS6, we started fixing a lot of the workflows. Dreamweaver CC, even more improvements. You saw the UI has gone from kind of a weird salmon pink with kind of yellow highlights to just a more subtle gray grid background with a light blue. We have more flexibility in the heads-up display. You can copy elements, you can hide elements, you can duplicate, you can move them up and down. You can also add elements in the markup itself that will align things to the grid in different ways and remove the margins and things like that. So the flexibility is increasing, and it's only going to get better. Now, Camilo is asking about Canvas integration. And actually, Leon is asking about working with SVG. So you can open an SVG document in Dreamweaver. You can insert a Canvas object in Dreamweaver, but we aren't looking at Canvas or SVG in any real depth right now. The reason for that is that these areas have a lot to do with graphics, and actually Adobe is working very, very hard with not just internally, but with other external groups as well to come up with the right solutions for these elements. Canvas is something that I thought was going to be the end-all, be-all for animation, but things have changed there, and now you have WebKit animation. You have WebGL, which draws on Canvas, I believe. You have tools like Edge Animate, which don't draw on the canvas at all, and so there are a lot of moving parts there. I lost my place. I totally lost my place here. Okay, here we go. So with regard to Canvas and SVG, okay. Yeah, did we lose some of the chat? I don't know what happened there. Okay, I lost a couple of those questions, but with regard to both SVG and Canvas, there are a lot of other folks working on solutions there. So we plan to stay close, work in any integrations that we possibly can. All right. Now, what is new that supports SEO, CSS processors, preprocessors? Will the new Dreamweaver have better integration for third-party CMS, aka WordPress? I saw a question about Drupal as well. Absolutely, we're very committed to simplifying those workflows. Part of that is embedding, a server within Dreamweaver so we can automate that process. Then, the question is, what are these different CMS systems going to do for the database component, for the MySQL component? If PHP is not supporting MySQL, what's gonna be replacing that? I don't know yet, but we're gonna be very committed to working with that. Chris B asks about better support for templating. I'm really glad you asked because I didn't get a chance to get into this in the presentation. We actually went and had a bunch of templates created for us. They're responsive templates that work with our own Fluid Grid layout framework. We also have another set of templates which are identical that work with the 1140 pixels framework. So we do have some very nice templates that are shipping with Dreamweaver CC. So you're going to see those in Dreamweaver CC starting on June 17th. Now Justin is asking about how Brackets is going to fare with Dreamweaver. I think Brackets is going to be just fine. Brackets, Edge Code, these are really developer-focused tools. They have a lot to do with JavaScript editing as well. They're embedding things like performance monitoring tools for JavaScript. So they've got their own niche. Also, Brackets is open source. So, you're going to see them kind of moving in a not a parallel direction. John Farrar is asking about Mura CMS built on Cold Fusion. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you there, but I see your link, and I'll raise you I'll get back to you. Please follow me on Twitter and send me notes so I can have a way to get back to you guys on some of this stuff, okay? Oh, getmira.com. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. All right. Ron asked about DMS zone or CMS zone, but it looks like somebody answered, Jim answered DMX zone. Thank you for clarifying that. And Travis seems happy about no cold fusion support in Dreamweaver. That's good. Glad somebody's happy about that. Yeah, look, tables, expanded tables, all that stuff. I recognize that HTML emails are still very important. Hopefully most folks are mainly using tables only for HTML emails and not for building website content. That's really not so much best practices anymore. So, but we actually we had a gotcha moment. We took away expanded tables and then we brought them back. So you can still build your HTML emails in Dreamweaver. John is asking about documents on building Dreamweaver extensions and tools. John, I really think you better hit me up offline because that's another one that I would love to get back to you on, but I just I don't have an answer. That's something that we could talk to Al or George or some of the pre-release guys about, some of the guys who have developed extensions extensively. Wow. Had to go there. Dreamweaver with MySQL and PHP. Again, unclear what's happening with MySQL, so we've got a lot of discovery to do there. Is there an easy insert for HTML5 slideshows? So I think that's a little misleading because while HTML5 video, HTML5 audio are part of an HTML5 specification, slideshows are something that you would have to build on top of HTML5 and very likely use a combination of CSS and JavaScript. There are ways to do it with just CSS using animation keyframes, but that's not something that we're supporting yet in Dreamweaver. And I think that your best bet is to either check out an extension or go through a tutorial online for building an HTML5 compliant slideshow. Okay. Sully is asking, will MySQL Lite replace old MySQL Connect? Again, this is an area of discovery for us right now. Brian is asking about a link to the Flexbox thing for doing tables in a fluid grid. So again, part of our update, not the Dreamweaver CC launch that we have on June 17th, but the very next update is preliminary support for Flexbox, and that includes support for Flexbox, for the CSS of, Flexbox is just CSS. It's part of CSS3, so we plan to support that as soon as possible. And I don't know of any online tutorials yet, but we will be shooting videos for how to work with Flexbox within Fluid Grid layouts very shortly. In fact, my counterpart in India, Silas, he's already done some of this stuff. So let me actually put a link here for you guys. Yep, flexboxlayouts.com. Oh, he took it down. Hang on, maybe. No. Flexboxlayouts.com. All right, well, I'm just going to post it anyway. It's coming soon, but you're going to see that website go live within a couple of weeks. So maybe just bookmark it, and then if you remember, you can go back and check out how Flexbox works, not only with Fluid Grid layouts, but just in general, because Flexbox is a great solution coming from the CSS guys at W3C? No, I guess CSS comes from everywhere. Okay. Can we get a session on working with SVG in Illustrator and Dreamweaver? That's another one. Please follow me on Twitter and send me a note about that, because I would love to get one of my peers here who's kind of an SVG guru, she might really be able to do that or guide me on setting one up. Tiago, I think, was speaking Portuguese earlier. Eu falo pouco de português. Eu estou tentando aprender a português. Quero viajar a Brasil o ano que vem. I'm a developer and I have a CMS system and dev components. How can I integrate them with Dreamweaver? I want to create panels, buttons, menus. Is it possible? Man, you see, of course it's possible. Of course it's possible. It's just you have to have a very studied, organized approach to this. You'd want to set up your session with sort of a robust class system and use things like data and data roles in your markup to start building out your framework. But I mean, you're talking about building a whole framework. Dreamweaver is not really set up to build a whole new frame. I mean, it is. You can certainly do that, but it's not like we are approaching web design from the concept of, hey, let's help people build a framework. Our goal is to help people build web content, dynamic web content, responsive web content, right? Best practice web content. So if you're trying to build out that kind of framework, it's definitely possible in Dreamweaver, of course, but I wouldn't say that we have built tooling around building out a framework. So that is tough. Now Trav is saying, in the next 2 months, put Cold Fusion back or I'll be stuck with CS6 forever and ever. Okay, so again, this is discovery for us. I'm not sure what's happening, but what you do get with your Creative Cloud membership is you get access to the old builds, starting with CS6. So even if you're using Dreamweaver CC, you can always go back and download CS6 for free with your Creative Cloud membership, and you can do the Cold Fusion stuff you need to. Now, that's kind of a Band-Aid, and I recognize that, but at least that's there in place if you need to go and do that. Whether we put Cold Fusion support back in, I would say remains to be seen. Now it says Creative Cloud subscribers are all set for the update on 6.17. Yeah, as long as you're a subscriber, you'll get the notification in the Adobe Application Manager, which will tell you that a new version of Dreamweaver is available. Now, Dreamweaver CC does not overwrite Dreamweaver CS6, so you can have both installed on your system. Okay, AM is asking about ASP, ASP.NET. We're not really supporting ASP.NET anymore, guys. We're really focused on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and some of the frameworks that go along with that. And then with regard to middle and back end, I mean, obviously, we could do more with JSON data. We could do more with jQuery data. We could do more with PHP. We're definitely supporting PHP. I myself am quite interested in Node.js. So all these things are kind of on the chopping block for us. We just haven't, we're still defining the plan there. But ASP.NET is yeah, that's not something we're going to be looking at. Brandy, again, is talking about MySQLite. I mean, that may be the way to go. Camilo, hey, thanks a lot. A little compliment there. I appreciate that. It's very kind. Maybe if web platform installer for installing Apache and MySQL isn't in order. Currently, I install PHP and MySQL via WPI, and it's great, but I use IIS for my local server. Yeah, again, we really want to try and automate as much of that stuff as possible. So if PHP may not support MySQL in the future, what is the best way to use MySQL in Dreamweaver? David, right now, as much as it kills me to say it, I think your best bet is to go utilize something like a MAMP or a WAMP. Get your Apache server running, and then in Dreamweaver you can go into live view, and let's say you've got a blog URL. You can do the mysql.blogurl.com and set up your database that way. If you're using WordPress, you've got the wconfig file, which you can also open in Dreamweaver. But you probably are going to need to rely on a WAMP or a MAMP, or setting up a local server through your terminal or your command line. Creative Cloud subscribers will get a notification on the June 17th release, but it won't download to your machine without you asking for it, okay? So then, can Edge Reflow export projects for Dreamweaver? Not yet. The Edge Reflow tool is still in early stages. They haven't really optimized for integrating into Dreamweaver or other tools yet. There is a very interesting Reflow Edge code workflow, but it takes some configuration. So Reflow does export web projects, but they're a little bit tricky right now. Let's see. Oh, Jim already answered that. Okay, sorry about that. So Brian mentions Edge Reflow. I just want to point out, okay, so Edge Reflow is kind of meant for a different phase of your design process. You're going between Photoshop and Edge Reflow for, making some comps and making some mock-ups and things like that. You're using Edge Reflow as a visualization tool and as a preliminary approach. If you are using Dreamweaver's fluid grid layouts, let's say, or you're using Bootstrap or some other framework, those are meant for a more, design, architect, and publish workflow. Dreamweaver's fluid grid layouts are meant for a production-ready code output that you're going to be able to deploy to a site. Reflow is not at a place where they're outputting code that you would deploy to a website. Reflow is really a good visualization tool, and again, works very well with Photoshop. So that's the difference between the two. We're really focused on outputting production-ready code and getting you all set for a publication workflow. So okay. Oh, I guess you were being sarcastic earlier, Travis. Sorry about that. IDE is asking about a snippets panel with Java, PHP, CSS. So we do have some snippets already, and we are looking at expanding that. So yes, we will probably be expanding the snippets. Maybe not with Java, but certainly with some JavaScript. And maybe we can look at some WordPress and Drupal and Joomla snippets possible. Now, Franz is asking about fallbacks for HTML5 audio and video. They're not automated, but when you do insert an HTML5 video or audio component into your project, in the Properties Inspector, you see the space for setting up your fallbacks. Now, as you probably know, with HTML5 video, you have to already have created a fallback. I mean, Dreamweaver is not going to output a Flash. It's not going to convert your video into Flash for you. You have to have done that already. But if it's in the same directory or if it's in another directory, you can use the Properties Inspector to locate that fallback, and yeah, you should be good to go with that. Thanks for posting the Twitter handle once again. Oh, yeah, I'm working on my Portuguese, man, for sure. I hope to be able to uh, to get good. Um, Tiago, do you mind posting your Twitter handle? Because I may be in Brazil in July, and I actually could use your help getting connected down there. So Sully, Sully says, where did you hear PHP to stop MySQL? MySQL Lite was the replacement. Have not heard word of a change. Yeah, my understanding is that MySQL support is going away in the future. But yeah, you know, the MySQL Lite may be what we need to be looking at. That's just, you know, it's in flux. So before we go and double down on a bunch of tooling for a framework, we want to make sure that that framework is going to be in place. So we're in the discovery mode for that right now. But we will be honing in on middle layer and back end stuff a little bit after we really nail the front end story, because that's what's, I think, really missing from Dreamweaver right now. Chepuller calls out WebAssist. Yeah, absolutely. WebAssist plugins are totally awesome. They are fantastic. Reflow, blah, 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 blah. Okay. PDO. I actually don't know about PDO. Okay. PHP PDO. I'll take a look at that. So we're at 11:30, and I think we've gone through most of the questions. I should probably get going.
Thanks, Alejandro. I think you did great. Thanks for staying an extra half hour. And so
Yeah.
we'll get the recording of this.
No, please. Thank you all to everybody who attended. Thank you all for great questions. And, you know, I really appreciate the time, and just, you know, if you take away one thing from this presentation, it's that we're focused on providing regular updates that are in response to everything that comes from you guys. So we're all about making sure that our tools are what are truly best for you guys and in line with web platform, not Adobe platform. So that's really the bottom line for us. And man, thanks again. All you guys are super awesome. It's great. It's always a lot of fun. So thank you. And until next time. And thanks, Megan and Tarek. I appreciate your work too.
Oh, thank you, Alejandro.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.